Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us on our 10th live webinar. My name is Jose Merchan, and I'll be guiding us today with this presentation. We're going to talk today on... We are going to talk today on extensibility in Blazedpath. And I'm going to be joined by Gustavo Merchan, which is the managing director on the Q&A phase, so that he can answer any questions if we have any questions referring to something on roadmap or any other more general aspects of the presentation. We've been seeing on our previous webinars how to create our applications, how to deploy applications on the cloud, how to use the block editors to customize behavior on our solutions, on our functions, and all of the aspects of Blazedpath. And today we are going to be talking on extensibility, which we've covered a bit on previous webinars. Today we are going to be talking about how to package your solution to share across your peers or reuse across different solutions or different products. So before we jump into the table of contents and explain what we are going to talk about today, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us a like on the YouTube's. Also, there's a link down in the description to subscribe to register for today's webinar. We are giving away 5,000 cloud credits for anyone who has registered for today's webinar and open their Blazedpath accounts within the next 24 hours. Just as a reminder, those cloud credits are used when you are building and deploying the final deploy of your project. If you have any questions, as always, just write them down on the chat. We are going to try and answer them in the Q&A section. So don't worry if we don't get back to your question right away. We always read all the questions and try to answer them at the end. So let's jump into the table of contents directly. So on extensibility, we're going to touch on what are the different aspects of extensibility. Mainly what we are going to briefly talk about of what we've seen as extensibility in previous webinars, and today we are going to be talking about the second bullet point on assets, how to create assets, how to link them to folders, and then how to package your whole solution and upload them to a repository so you can reutilize them on next iterations. So on extensibility, let's quickly start talking about when you are creating a project, you may want to take advantage of your previous work. You may want to make a modular solution so you can reuse it in the future. You may want to share your work in the marketplace or in your with your peers in your company. We've talked on previous webinars on extensions and how to take advantage of the entire npm.js library. Today we are going to talk about on the other aspects, which is basically the assets. So there are three main concepts we jump around pretty much all the time, which are extensions, assets, and packages. When we are talking about extensions, we are talking about how to extend the library. Let's say you have npm.js function you really want to use because it solves something you want to do. So you add an extension and you wrap the function of the npm.js library in an extension. Today we're going to talk about assets, which are basically encapsulating another aspect, but you can store in their elements such as whole functions in Blazedpath, whole screens, whole object types. So anything you can basically store in the workspace, you can store in an asset. And finally, a package refers to the whole workspace, which is then packaged and uploaded to a repository. So whenever you download the package, you basically can download the entire workspace to work in your new workspace. So you have access to all of the little modules you've made out of that solution. So to start illustrating this a little bit better, we're just going to jump over to the main develop. So this is the basically the workspace we're going to be using today to guide the presentation. This is just a clone of the security hands-on example, which we are going to be taking advantage of, so that we don't start from scratch a solution. So basically the assets are these little sections in here. So when we open the workspace, this is the whole workspace. You have all of your solutions, and as you can see, there's basically nothing here. There's just one solution, which is a clone of a Blazedpath essential example. We have no assets and no extensions. As I just explained, the extensions are when you wrap a library from npm.js, such as a round robin protocol, or I don't know, a location finder, or a location distance calculator. So all those extensions that you may find in the npm.js library would go next to the extensions. Today we're going to be talking about the assets, and the packages comprise the entire workspace, which will then, on a new solution, will be available as basically the same as the Blazedpath essentials are right now, which is they are a subgroup of assets, extensions, and solutions you may want to see. So as we just discussed, the asset itself is a subgroup of elements. Basically, it's a folder in one of the systems. So you may have extensions in any front end, you may have extensions in any microservice, and you may have extensions in any database. You may have assets in the database, microservice, or front end. So the way you can spot an asset is basically you will see a folder. That folder may be an extension, an asset, and that asset is going to be linked with all of the elements that are inside the folder. So again, the best way to get this section available for all of your future projects is to create an asset out of each folder you want to modularize. So let's say we have a folder which we want to store, I don't know, let's say this screen, which is the product screen, this is a very simple screen, but we are going to be using this screen for this example. Let's say this is a particularly well-made screen, and we want to make this available as a group to a future project. So let's start by creating an asset, and out of that asset we are going to start adding elements so we can then make them available for the future. So go back to the workspace, create a new asset. We are going to name this asset module with products information. This is just a random name. So this is going to jump to the asset section. You may see that there's not much to do in here. If you right click on each of the items, there basically you will not be able to do anything here, but that's okay because all of the work is going to be done directly into the solution itself. So let's go back to the solution. This is where we're going to start doing the work. I'm going to jump over there to the Explorer, and on the front end I'm going to create a new folder. So this is going to be a new folder, and I'm going to call this product information. And out of this folder, I want to link this specific new empty folder to the asset. So right click, and select create link, and this will give me a wizard pop-up with all the different assets that are available, and I'm going to choose the only asset I have right now in the solution, which is a module with product information. Click on next, and then you will jump to a section that refers to aliases and systems. Since this is the package that I am going to be using at the end, this section will probably always be empty. But whenever I start using this asset as an extension, as a package added in other solutions, you'll see that there's options here. I'm just going to jump over this section, and we will see what it is for in a few minutes. So the aliases that I see here, let me jump here. So as you can see here in this architecture diagram, we have 4 microsystems, 4 databases, and a front end. So I'm creating the assets in the front end, and the extension, the asset I am going to be creating is going to be containing basically this. So this is the UI component the asset is going to contain, and this component has on the logic editor, there is a call to a microservice and a function. This is basically a call to a function that is exposed by the microservice. And by notation, we have a name in this expression editor, and this name basically cannot be changed in an asset. So maybe on your end product or the product you are reutilizing this asset from has a different name, because these names are defined in the architecture diagram and they are basically arbitrary. You can use any name you want in here. The aliases section is to map your name of your new solution to the name that was made on the when the asset was created. So in here, the alias is going to be from my product MS, and then you can set up the alias on your new solution to whatever your new microservice is called. So if your microservice is called microservice for product manager and it's a big name, you will set up that alias. We are going to see that when we reutilize the package and we include the asset on the new solution. So that's how you create the link of the folder. We're going to copy this page, and I'm going to delete it from the main section. So basically now I have a linked folder with one UI component, and this UI component is now in an extension. So if we go back to the assets, we can see that we have the UI component now lives in the asset. So let's go back to the main solution. So that's how you can see that a folder you're working with is basically an asset, because as you can see, it here has a little different color and it has a different legend that indicates the name of the asset it's linked to. So basically you can do this however many times you want. Let's say you have a group of elements that refers to a customer manager. Maybe have a lot of object types, and you have a lot of customer forms, and you want to group them all in an asset. You make a folder, you create an asset, and you get all those components in the folder. So then whenever you create a new solution, you can go back and reutilize all those screens without having to go through the trouble of creating them again. You can also have assets on microservices. So you may want to create the different assets by type. So in this case, we have, I don't know if you can see here, let me quickly open So you have customers, customer addresses. Maybe you want to create a different asset for customers and a different asset for customer addresses. You can create however many folders you want to and create different assets. And basically you can do exactly the same on the databases. So the assets don't by necessarily mean that they live in a certain system. They can live anywhere. So it's up to you to know where the asset should go. So that's basically it to create an asset. You can then start running your application, and basically all the testing and all the development for the assets is done through a solution. And basically then you extract that little folder as an asset for a future project. So basically, what now? Let's say you're ready to publish your assets packages to the marketplace. So I'm going to grab this entire workspace and we're going to create a package from it and publish it to the repository. When I'm talking about packages and repositories, I'm talking about this section here. Let me get a little bit backwards. So these are basically packages that you have by default in the Blazedpath repositories. So your solution may want to send emails or may want to connect via SSH. These are some of the packages that Blazedpath offers by default. And whenever you want your solution to manage, let's say, emails, you just click on that package. This will download the whole package, and then you will have assets, extensions, and demo solutions, ideally, that lets you know how to operate these particular functions that refers, in this case, to emails. So this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to get this whole workspace, and I'm going to repackage it so I can upload it here. So whenever you want to reutilize this package, you can do so from your repository. So there are a couple of things you are going to need to go over the whole process. So I'm going to open a quick list of what you need to do in here. Basically, you need a local repository manager, since Blazedpath connects by default to the repository manager for Blazedpath. If you want your packages to be private, you may want to get your own local private repository. We are using the Nexus repository manager from Sonatype. That's the one we are going to use in this example. That's basically our repository here. We're going to go on how to use this repository in the example. So the next thing we're going to need is basically npm installed locally. That's the address for you to download it. We are using npm mainly to download and use Yarn. Yarn is the other thing you're going to need. That's the command to actually install Yarn, so it's available not just on your folder, but on your entire computer. And then we are going to just be using a text editor and a command line, because we are going to be using Yarn via command line. So if you're watching this video at a later day, you can just pause it right now until you get all of these tools installed. So I'll give you a few seconds so you can download it and install all of the things you need to follow along. Right, let's continue. First, we are going to be doing version checks of the programs we're going to be using today. So let me open command prompt, and for that I am going to just work on my local path. So change directory, and in here I'm going to just do some version checks, but for that I'm going to be using a little bit of zoom so it's easier to read on the webinar. My goodness. There you go. So the version for npm there you go. Took a while. So the only thing that this proves is that the npm is installed. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing for yarn. So then there it is. So yarn is installed, and we are going to be using, as I just showed, a local private repository, which I'm going to be using a test user called test001. The thing you need to know about private repositories is if you are in need of using Blazedpath packages, you can set up your local private repository to redirect the search to Blazedpath, so you also see our packages that we offer. If you just point your local workspace to your own local repository, you of course are not going to be able to see these packages and all of the packages from the community. So make sure that here. So in the repository manager, you set up a proper redirect from your group repository to the Blazedpath one. And the address and user and password for that are on our little package.json files on the workspace. So you see in here in Blazedpath you have a path. This is basically the location of the folder you are storing the workspace on. So if you add that, if you open that that folder on any text editor, you will see this package.json file. So this is what the file has right now. So by default, it has a version number. This version number refers to the version of your own project. So by default, we always start with 1.1. I'm just going to change this, so whenever I'm getting the publish, we can see that the actual version differs a little bit from the standard one. So you see that our changes are being impacted. So this is going to be 123, and this is going to be 321. The Blazedpath object property in this JSON file is basically referring to the Blazedpath version you have been developing with on this extension. And then we have an attribute called publish config, which basically this is the URL for the repository for Blazedpath, the username and password you need to use in order to connect to the Blazedpath repository to get all those packages. So make sure you take note of this URL and set it up as a redirect on your local repository. And the dependencies are just there to ensure that any packages you are using are going to be appearing in here. So we're going to be starting to add a couple of things in this JSON file so that our packages has some information whenever we publish it. So the first thing we are going to start by adding, it's always on the root. So just click on enter and start adding new properties. The first is going to be the name of the package. So we are going to be using a string for that. I'm going to call this package webinar on packages. Just add a comma at the end, and let's get back to the next one. The next one is going to be an author. So this is basically who wrote this program or this package. And this is actually an object, and I'm going to be using a name, and I'm going to use my name in here, merchant, and then email. So email. And this is the email I've been using all along too for my for all the webinars we've been using on the cloud deployment. So I'm just going to reuse them. The next property we're going to use is just a license. so that our program actually has a license, but I'm going to set my license to unlicensed. Then the owner is going to be Blazedpath. And then there's one last field, which is a flag, and this flag is called private, and basically this is a Boolean type of object that basically lets this the repository know if this package is going to be shared with anyone with access or not. So this is not going to be private, so I'm just going to set it to false. And there we go. The next thing we need to do is to actually grab this publish config information and use the information for our own private repository. And for that, I am just going to do a copy paste because it's a lot to write. There we go. I think that's pretty good. So basically, publish config has a registry. The registry has the full URL, and then we have a username and password. This is not the actual password. I'm going to be writing the password off screen, but just don't forget to add the password. If you don't add the correct password, it's going to basically deny you the access. So that's pretty much it for the package.json. Just let's make sure you save it, and then we are going to go directly to the command line, and we're going to start with the process of updating the registry. But before that, I'm going to move this from here. I'm going to add the password, click on enter, and then I'm going to reload Blazedpath. The point of reloading Blazedpath right now is to show you that it's actually connecting to repository, but it has no packages because this is going to be the private repository. And the idea being is that whenever I'm done with the publish, I'm going to see my package in here. So this is my private repository. There's nothing here. And whenever I'm done with the publish, I'm going to see my new package in here. So open up this again, and in here make sure to do a quick refresh on the login. npm and yarn have logins, so make sure to log out and log in again in case you don't have the proper credentials set up. So start typing yarn log out, and then for the login I am going to copy and paste this again because this is very long, but basically it's just yarn login space -- registry and the full URL we are trying to log to. So click on enter. The username is going to be the same one, so test001 pkg, and then it's going to ask for an email, jailmerchant blazedpath@gmail.com. So that's basically a login, so Yarn is going to be using those credentials. And then I'm just going to go directly and start publishing my package. So to publish the package, you go yarn space publish space and the full URL. Click on enter. It's going to give you the current version of the package. If you want to change the version, you can do so from here. If you don't want to change it, just click on enter. It's going to take the same again. So just going to, for update's sake, 1.124.111. So now it's going to ask me for the password. And npm js. Let me go over this again. Sometimes the copy and paste doesn't work very well. Copy and paste it. Okay. So just use the new version, use the password, and then you get to log in. And there you go. You have your package published. If we go back to Blazedpath and we research again, we can see that our package has already been published. And we have all the information for the license, the owner, the author, and etc. So yeah, that's basically takes care of the packaging and upload to the local repository. So now when you go back to Blazedpath, you will see the packaging here. Just make sure that the package.json file of your final workspace always has the published config, targeting your own repository so that you can see your own packages. In the future, you're going to be able to upstream them and share with other users using the public marketplace, where you will be able to monetize your packages and share them with the community. Just so you know what I've been talking about on reutilizing the packages, I'm going to do a quick exercise on creating a new workspace from scratch and then download this package. So I'm going to create a new workspace. This is basically supposed to be a whole new project of my own. So create a new folder. This is going to be new project, webinar. Select it as a folder. Close that. And what I want to do now for Blazedpath is to open up the package.json file and make sure we have the published config with all the information from there. So, I opened this 2 times. This is basically a new solution, and I'm going to call this new solution webinar. Click on OK, and this solution is going to have a front end and a microservice called MS. And the front end is going to be making call to the microservice. So this is just a very bare bones approach. I am actually going to open the package.json file from this new solution. So add project folder, go back to workspaces and add my new workspace. Open the package.json file and copy and paste the published config. There we go. So if we reload, Blazedpath is going to connect to our new repository. And my new repository is going to have my package, and I'm going to add the package. So this will basically give me the solution I've been working on my other package as an example, and it's going to give me all of the assets that I just created on the previous exercise. So again, whenever you add a package, it's going to reload Blazedpath. And if you go to the marketplace, you will see that the package is added and up to date. And if you go to the workspace, you can see that we now have a dependency called package webinar on packages. And if we open the dependency, we can see the asset. So basically, the way to reutilize this asset is we go to the Explorer and we are going to link that asset to a folder. I'm just going to call it folder name or foobar, and right click, create link to my asset. This is the asset I created for the package. Click on OK, click on finish, and that basically imports the UI component I've been working on. So that's the full example of how to create an asset, how to package the entire solution, publish it to a local repository, and then reutilize all those sections or subgroups of elements you had from your workspace from your solution, so you can reutilize them on other new products you have. So that's basically it for this webinar. I'm going to quickly go into Q&A. I think, are you there, Gustavo? So we have Gustavo Marchand, which is the managing director here on Blazedpath, which will help us talk on Q&A if you have any questions. Can you see any questions?
Hello,
on
everybody.
The chat?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Jose. So this is a rather more, let's say, advanced or technical webinar session to the point on how to extend capabilities. So there could be a couple of questions that we'll be happy to take on.
Yeah, the first question comes from Jennifer, which is, hi, is there any way to monetize the packages? I think that's perfect for you, Gustavo.
Yeah, so at the moment there isn't, but in plans is soon actually for next year is a marketplace where all that Yarn functionality will be completely transparent for the end user of Blazedpath. So you'll be able to both download packages and upload it to Blazedpath Marketplace. And those could be free, or those could be whenever, of course, they are yours. You could specify a price, and then you'll be able to monetize or resell your packages to the rest of the Blazedpath community. That's on plans for 2022, for next year. Yeah.
Perfect. And from Owen, we have, just to clarify, is there a difference between packages and assets? Yeah, the difference between packages, assets, and maybe extensions, you may have them tangled up. When I talk about packages, let me jump over the screen again. So when I'm talking about packages, I'm talking about everything that's directly in the repository. Which basically packages are whole workspaces repackaged, so you can then use it somewhere else. And packages can contain assets, extensions, and solutions. So that's the package is like the big thing you're using. And then when I'm talking about assets, I'm talking about these little sections, which are basically folders that are connected to a solution, then you can reutilize them anywhere else. So yeah, that's the difference between packages and assets. And extensions, just so we can clarify, are basically wrappers for library then you can call from any expression editor. So I think I touched on this. Just let me say it again. If you have some crazy mathematical function that it's in the npm.js library, and it's just like an evaluation on something, you wrap that whole library on an extension, and then you can call that extension that wraps the library from anywhere in Blazedpath. So yeah, those are like the three extensibility approaches from Blazedpath, which they are all interconnected.
So to complement your response, Jose, could we say that assets are linked to your solution, whereas extensions are kind of appended to your solution? Would that be a difference? If that's completely wrong, you can say. But in the sense how you work with an asset, you are linking it to your solution, whereas an extension, you are wrapping it and it becomes part of your solution.
Both kind of, but not really. Let's not get them confused. You can link them for sure, but that's not just that. That's just to work on an asset, you have to link it, but then it's an entire different thing. So it's just so that you link them to work on it, but then it's unlinked. Whenever you're using it as a package, it's its own thing. It doesn't necessarily change.
Okay, so then we could in the future come back with that and clarify a few points if it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me make, no one asked for this, but let me just make a quick note. on repositories and redirects, which is basically what I've been talking about here. Whenever you're using whenever you're using a repository manager, if you want to have access to the Blazedpath packages, you have to set up on your private repository a redirect to the Blazedpath repositories. So right now we didn't really do that, so we only see the package I published. But if you set up a redirect on your own private repository to the Blazedpath repository, you will see your packages and the ones from Blazedpath. So that's just a quick clarification that I think was necessary, just because usually whenever a client uses local repositories, they also want to have access to all of the native packages from Blazedpath. So I think that's all of the information for today. We're going to wrap this up. Just remember to set up, to leave the subscribe and the like on your way out. And if you have any questions or any proposals or any requests, make sure to leave it on the comments or the forums or in the chats whenever we are live. Okay. Any other final comments before we wrap up, Gustavo?
No, so just to thank everybody for joining, and we'll be coming back with future webinars of different topics. More practical ones could be how to tackle specific building challenges, and on an actual application. So we're planning to do that in the future, and yeah, so very happy to be building Blazedpath and being able to release updates frequently. But this the last update was a few weeks ago or a month ago or so, and the next one will be pushed. The next release, will be pushed towards November, the end part of November, and yeah, we'll have exciting new features that will touch on those also in Blazedpath, especially supporting for message queues and other integration patterns for distributed applications. So stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you on the next webinar.